Margaret lived in a small house on a quiet street, in a quiet town. The days passed slowly there, like leaves falling from an autumn tree, one by one. She had a garden with roses, red and yellow. Samuel, her late husband, had planted them long ago. Now only she tended to them. Their fragrance filled the air, but the house remained quiet, too quiet sometimes. Her children, Clara and Thomas, were grown. They lived far away. Cities called to them with busy lives and careers. Margaret understood, or she tried to, but understanding did not fill the empty chairs at her table. She saw their pictures on the mantelpiece, smiling faces from holidays past. She talked to them sometimes. The pictures, not the children. Phone calls were short, schedules were tight. "We're busy, Mom," they would say. She knew, but knowing didn't ease the ache. Loneliness was a familiar companion. It settled in like dust on old furniture, on old memories. Margaret would sit by the window, watching the world go by. A cat strolling, a mailman walking, each day much like the last. She baked cookies sometimes. The smell would fill the house for a little while. Then it would fade, like a forgotten song. She missed the noise of a full house, the laughter, the arguments, the life. She often thought of Samuel, his easy smile, the way he held her hand. They had built this life together, brick by brick, memory by memory. Now she was the keeper of those memories, a lonely guardian. The town was peaceful, but peace could feel like emptiness when shared with no one. She longed for connection, a real connection, not just a fleeting phone call. She longed for her family. One Tuesday morning, the sun was pale. It peeked through the lace curtains. Margaret decided to sort the attic. It was a place of forgotten things, a place she seldom visited. Dust motes danced in the weak light. Old trunks and boxes stood like silent sentinels. Each held a piece of the past. She moved slowly. Her joints ached a little, but her spirit was determined. She needed a task, something to fill the quiet hours. She reached for a large cardboard box. It was tucked under the eaves, covered in a thick layer of dust. Samuel's things she had written on it many years ago. Her heart gave a small flutter, like a trapped bird. She hadn't opened this box since he passed. It felt like disturbing a peaceful sleep. But something pulled her towards it, a need to remember, a need to feel. With a sigh, she pulled the box into the light. The old tape creaked as she peeled it back. Inside, things were neatly packed. His favorite old sweater. A pipe he never really smoked but liked to hold. A few faded photographs. And then she saw them. A bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. His handwriting was on the top envelope. Clear, strong, familiar. Tears welled in her eyes, unexpected, warm. She picked up the bundle. Her fingers trembled slightly. The paper was thin, yellowed with age. These were his letters. Letters he had written to her during their courtship, during his time away for work. Letters she had cherished. Letters she had almost forgotten. A wave of emotions washed over her. Sadness for what was lost. Gratitude for what had been. And a sudden, sharp longing for his presence, for his voice, for his love, for his... Margaret sat on an old wooden stool. The attic air was cool. She untied the blue ribbon carefully. The knot gave way easily, as if waiting. She chose the top letter. Her name was written on the envelope. My dearest Margaret. His words from so long ago. Her heart ached with a sweet pain. She unfolded the paper. The ink was slightly faded, but his spirit felt alive on the page. He wrote of simple things. The weather in the town where he worked. A funny dog he saw on the street. His longing to be home with her. Each sentence was a brushstroke, painting a picture of their young love. His words were gentle, full of hope, full of affection. I count the days until I see your smile, he wrote. She could almost hear his voice, as if he were there, whispering in her ear. She smiled through her tears. She read another letter, and then another. Each one was a treasure, a window into their shared past. He wrote about their dreams, buying the little house on a quiet street, planning a rose garden, raising a family. dreams they had built together, dreams they had lived. The letters were filled with his optimism, his steadfast love. It was a love that had weathered storms, a love that still felt real, so very real. The letters reminded her of who she was, not just an old woman in a quiet house, but Margaret, Samuel's beloved wife, a woman who had loved deeply and been loved deeply. The words warmed her, chased away some of the chill of loneliness. Samuel was gone, but his love remained. In these fragile pages, in her steadfast heart, it was a powerful reminder. Love never truly dies, it just changes its form. Holding Samuel's letters felt like holding his hand. His love flowed from the pages into her heart. It was a strong, steady current, and it sparked something within her, an idea, a need. If Samuel's words could touch her so deeply after all these years, perhaps her words could touch her children. Clara, Thomas, they needed to know what was in her heart. She thought of them, so far away, living their busy lives. Did they remember the old stories? Did they feel the roots that connected them to this house, to her, to Samuel? Maybe they had forgotten. Or maybe life had just become too loud, too distracting. She didn't blame them, but she wanted to reach them, to bridge the distance. Not with a quick phone call, but with something lasting, something they could hold, like she held Samuel's letters. A letter. That was it. She would write them a letter, a real letter, penned by her own hand. She would pour her heart onto the page, her memories, her hopes, her love. It felt important, urgent even. Samuel's letters were a gift, a reminder of connection. She wanted to give her children a similar gift, a piece of her heart, for them to keep, always. She went downstairs to her small writing desk by the window. The sun was a little stronger now. It cast a warm glow on the polished wood. She found her best stationery, the one with the faint scent of lavender. She picked up her favorite pen. It felt good in her hand, solid, purposeful. Her heart was full. A little nervous, but mostly full of a quiet resolve. It was time to speak, from her heart to theirs. Margaret began to write. The words came slowly at first, then like a gentle stream. She thought of Clara as a little girl, with bright, curious eyes and pigtails that bounced when she ran. She wrote about the day Clara learned to ride her bicycle, wobbling, falling, then finally triumphantly pedaling away. A small moment, but it held so much pride, so much love. She smiled as she wrote. Then her thoughts turned to Thomas, her adventurous boy, always climbing trees, always exploring. She remembered a camping trip, just her, Samuel, and Thomas. They had told stories by the campfire under a sky full of stars. Thomas had been so brave, so full of wonder. She wrote about his kindness, the way he always looked out for others, even as a child. These memories were precious, like polished stones. She wrote about Samuel, too, their life together, the laughter, the struggles they overcame, the quiet evenings. She wanted Clara and Thomas to remember him as she did, a good man, a loving father, a devoted husband. She shared a small anecdote, something Samuel used to say, something that always made them smile. She hoped it would make them smile now and remember the warmth of their family. Her pen moved across the page, filling it with her careful script. She wrote of her wishes for them, for their happiness, for their health, for their futures. She told them how much she loved them, how proud she was of them. And she wrote about the importance of family, of staying connected, of cherishing each other. Life is precious, she wrote, and family is its greatest gift. Her heart felt lighter as she wrote, as if a burden was being lifted. Section 6. An Unexpected Interruption. Margaret finished the letter late in the afternoon. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the room. She read it over one last time, her eyes misted. Yes, this was what she wanted to say. She folded the pages carefully, placed them in an envelope addressed to Clara and Thomas. She would mail it in the morning. A sense of peace settled over her. A task completed. A message of love, ready to be sent. She felt a little tired. The day had been emotional, sorting through Samuel's things, writing the long letter. She decided to make a cup of tea. As she stood up from her chair, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The room seemed to tilt. She reached out for the desk to steady herself, but her hand missed. Her legs felt weak, like jelly. A sudden, sharp pain bloomed in her chest, tight, squeezing. Fear gripped her, cold and immediate. She stumbled, gasped for breath. This was not just tiredness. This was something serious. She managed to reach the telephone. Her fingers fumbled with the numbers. 911. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, asking questions. She answered as best she could. Her own voice sounded faint, distant. "Help me," she whispered. "Please." The wait for the ambulance felt like an eternity. Lying on the floor, the pain in her chest radiating down her arm. Her thoughts raced. The letter. Her letter to Clara and Thomas. It was still on the desk, unsent. What if they never got to read it? What if she never saw them again? The fear was not for herself, but for the words left unsaid. The love left unshared. This could not be the end. Not yet. Section 7. Footsteps rushing homeward. The news reached Clara first. A call from the hospital. Her mother had had a health scare. A possible heart attack. Clara's world stopped. Mom, so far away, so alone. She immediately called Thomas. Her voice trembled as she relayed the information. Thomas was quiet for a moment, then his voice firm. "I'm booking a flight. You too. We go now." There was no hesitation, no discussion of work or schedules, only urgency. Their journeys were a blur of anxiety. Airports, airplanes, worried thoughts. What if they were too late? What if their mother was seriously ill? Guilt gnawed at them. They hadn't visited enough. They hadn't called enough. Life had pulled them in so many directions, but now, only one direction mattered. Home, to their mother. They spoke little on the way, each lost in their own fears and their own prayers. They arrived at the small hospital in Margaretstown. The corridors smelled of antiseptic and hushed worry. A kind nurse led them to Margaret's room. She was in bed, looking pale, smaller than they remembered. Wires connected her to beeping machines, but her eyes were open. And when she saw them, a faint smile touched her lips. Relief washed over Clara and Thomas. So powerful, it almost buckled their knees. "Mom," Clara whispered, rushing to her side. Thomas followed, his hand gently taking Margaret's. "We're here, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "My children," she murmured, her voice weak but clear. In that moment, the distance vanished. The missed calls, the busy lives, none of it mattered. Only this, being together, the unspoken love, the fear, the immense relief. They were a family, reunited by a crisis, but reunited nonetheless. Section 8. Sharing the words of the heart. Margaret recovered slowly. The doctor said it was a mild heart attack, a warning. She needed to rest and avoid stress. Clara and Thomas stayed. They took turns sitting by her bedside, talking softly, sharing small comforts. The hospital room felt less sterile with them there. It felt more like home. After a few days, Margaret was allowed to return to her own house, with her children there to care for her. One afternoon, as she rested on the sofa, Margaret remembered the letter. "Clara," she said, her voice a little stronger now, "on my writing desk. There's a letter. Could you bring it to me?" Clara found it easily, still in its envelope, addressed to her and Thomas. She handed it to her mother. Margaret held it for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. "I wrote this," she said, before I got sick. I want you to hear it." Clara and Thomas sat down. An expectant silence filled the room. Margaret took a deep breath. Her hand trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. She began to read. Her voice was soft, but every word was clear, every emotion raw and real. She read about their childhoods, the small, cherished memories. She read about Samuel, their love, their life. She read her hopes for them, her deep, abiding love. As she read, tears streamed down Clara's face. Thomas sat very still, his eyes fixed on his mother, his expression unreadable at first. Then his own eyes grew moist. The words washed over them. Words of love, words of regret for time lost, words of connection. When Margaret finished, the room was quiet, a profound emotional silence. Then Clara reached for her mother's hand. Thomas reached for the other. No words were needed. The letter had said it all. It had opened their hearts. Section 9. The warmth of a reunited family. The letter changed everything. It was like a key, unlocking doors that had been closed for too long. Clara and Thomas understood, truly understood, their mother's loneliness, her deep love for them, the importance of the memories she held. They felt a pang of regret for the time they had let slip away, for the calls they hadn't made, for the visits they had postponed. But regret was now mixed with a new resolve. They stayed for several weeks, helping Margaret regain her strength. But it was more than just physical help. They talked, really talked, for hours, sharing stories. Laughter returned to the quiet house. The aroma of Clara's cooking filled the kitchen. Thomas fixed the creaky porch step just like Samuel used to do. Margaret watched them, her heart brimming. This was what she had longed for, her family, together. Before they had to leave, they made plans, regular visits, longer phone calls, video chats so Margaret could see their faces more often. "We won't let this happen again, Mom," Clara promised. "We'll be here." Thomas nodded in agreement. "You're not alone." And Margaret knew they meant it. The fear in their eyes during her illness, the tears when she read the letter, these were real. Their love was real. Margaret sat in her armchair by the window a few weeks later. The house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet, a peaceful quiet, filled with the warmth of recent memories and the promise of future visits. She held a new photograph in her hand, one of her, Clara, and Thomas, all smiling, taken in her garden. Samuel's roses were in full bloom behind them. She was not lonely anymore. Her heart was full, surrounded by love. The last letter had brought them home. And home, she realized, was not just a place. It was a feeling, a precious, unbreakable bond.